On this edition of Native Report, we travel to the Oneida Nation of Wisconsin and attend the National Food Sovereignty Summit.
We then visit the apple orchard owned and operated by the Oneida Nation since 1994.
And we learn about how the Oneida Nation of Wisconsin is using aquaponics that provides freshly grown, clean vegetables for the community.
We also learn what we can do to lead healthier lives and hear from our elders on this edition of Native Report.
Production of Native Report is made possible by grants from the Blandin Foundation, the Duluth Superior Area Community Foundation, and the Shakopee-Mdewakanton Sioux Community.
Welcome to Native Report, and thanks for tuning in. I'm Rita Aspinwall.
And I'm Ernie Stevens. The issue of food sovereignty has become a major movement across Indian country, and for the past several years, the Oneida Nation of Wisconsin has hosted the National Food Sovereignty Summit. Join us now as we learn more about food sovereignty and how the Oneida Nation share their experience with locally grown produce. Food sovereignty was on the minds of hundreds of participants at the Oneida Nation of Wisconsin's 5th Annual Food Sovereignty Summit, the undisputed national forum for sharing and collaboration to build healthy food systems in Native communities across Indian country. The Oneida Nation co-hosted the event with the First Nations Development Institute.
We started in 2013, and it was really a way to get all different tribes together that were working in food systems. So the idea was, how can we share different projects and ideas that are helping us build healthy communities? How sovereign are you if your people are plagued with diabetes or you can't feed them? This event, we usually close it off at 300. We don't want to get too large because sometimes you can have huge events, but you really don't get that networking. And this is really about paying it forward and sharing experiences. It's like connecting the dots in Indian country. What's worked for you in Indian country? Remember that in Indian country, there's a lot of nations, 567 nations, each with their own individual sovereignty and their policies. So the culture is incredible here. And I think that that's what we want to really gain out of it, is the respect for each other's backyard so that we can bring new ideas that help.
We are the primary sponsor in partnership with the Oneida Nation, and our job is, one, to get people here, so we give a lot of travel support scholarships. We support a lot of the food that we'll have, either from iCollective or like the Oneida Social. So we're primarily the financing arm, I think, of this summit. In the beginning, it was one of the first food summits that occurred in Indian country, and it was mainly to talk about the work that Oneida had done with their integrated food system. And over the years, it gradually became this national summit. And since its inception, there have been other smaller food summits that have popped up following the Oneida model. Food sovereignty is an integral part of Indigenous communities. We have always been good at feeding ourselves. We have always been good at ensuring our food is supportive of Native nationhood. And I don't think that's ending anytime soon.
By definition, food sovereignty is the right of peoples to healthy and culturally appropriate food produced through ecologically sound and sustainable methods, and their right to define their own food and agriculture systems.
This was kind of our foundation for some of our people that came up here starting 5 years ago when the summits first started, and seeing what all the other ag nations are doing, at least the ones that were represented here. We have resources, we have land, and it was just the spur that we needed. You know, we're far too dependent on what we'll call is the responsibility of the federal government. What they really strip from us is our understanding that we have our own responsibility. We should be feeding ourselves at the very least. You know, some of us are in very difficult situations, but a lot of us have enough land. You know, we have enough resources and space that we as people can do it. We want to grow 70% of what we eat in the next 7 years right from our territory or buying in from other territories. It's empowerment for us. It's empowerment for the families. It's not just the Seneca Nation that is doing it.
Over the 4 days, the summit attendees heard from a variety of speakers, such as Councillor John, and many attended the various breakout sessions. Participants also made field trips to the Oneida Nation's agricultural programs. And as the case with just about any conference, there are vendors and informational booths.
We have vendors, but they're always here to support the conference, and the conference is here to always support local vendors. So it's really one plays upon the other. And so I think the ones you're going to see here are probably about 16 vendors. You'll also have some people that are really showcasing what's happening in their own backyard, whether it's hemp, whether it's a nonprofit program, whether it is education. So we want them also to showcase that. This year we have 6 tracks, plus we have another experiential learning with aquaponics. So one track will go and learn about the apple orchard, how to prune, integrated food systems there, how to do an agritourism, because we just had an event on Saturday where there were about 8,000 people here to pick apples and enjoy Family Day. Another track will be the aquaponics. And in that one, they'll learn, it's a farm to school track, and so they'll learn about growing lettuce and water quality and about the fish. There are a lot of regional food sovereignty summits. There are a lot of other sovereignty summits that are traditional ones, and they're looking at the traditional food. So we've seen this evolve throughout the country over the last 6 years that we've started this. Our leadership is very involved in agriculture and champions it.
At this conference, you have people who are hunting, you have people who are gathering, you have people who are gardening, and we don't always see them. There's something to be said for the people who come to this conference because they don't really seek attention, but they're doing the work on the ground, and we don't always see them. And so I think this summit really is a place for them to share their expertise and their knowledge and what they're experiencing.
Jim asked about knee joint replacement surgery. He's had knee problems for years and never had surgery. He's had multiple injections into his knee, and his x-rays show complete cartilage loss with bone-on-bone arthritis. Knee replacement involves replacing the failing knee with an artificial joint or prosthesis. This is typically made of metal, plastic, or polymers, and what material is used depends on a variety of things, including your activity level, overall health, age, and weight. Your doctors will try less invasive treatments first, and these include weight loss, medications, physical therapy, and assistive devices such as braces and canes. Knee replacement surgery is usually reserved for people over 55, as younger people can outlive a knee replacement and could need additional surgery. You will need to have a pre-operative exam to make sure you can safely tolerate the anesthesia, and if anything abnormal is found, this gives time to correct and fine-tune any issues such as high blood pressure, heart problems, asthma, and other illnesses prior to surgery. This is a good time to let the provider doing your exam know if you have ever had an allergic reaction to or other problems with anesthesia. You may have to stop taking some medicines, such as aspirin and blood thinners, prior to surgery. Some medications may need dose adjustments prior to surgery, as you won't be able to eat anything for 6 to 8 hours or more before surgery. The surgery itself usually takes 1 to 2 hours, and this is a common surgical procedure. About 600,000 knee replacements take place in the United States every year. The technical name for a knee replacement is knee arthroplasty. The procedure involves a surgical incision above the knee to allow access to cut away the damaged cartilage and bone. The surgeon will attach the upper part of the new knee to the femur or thigh bone and the lower part of the new knee to the tibia or shin bone, and they will use specialized cement, screws, and pins to attach the new knee. The orthopedic surgeon will have patients start walking the day of surgery or the next day to promote blood flow and healing to the tissues involved in the operation. Sometimes a continuous passive motion machine is used, and this is a brace-like machine that continuously and gently bends and straightens your knee to help with movement. The recovery time after a knee replacement can be several months, and physical therapy is important to help you use your knee safely and properly as it heals and to prevent problems with range of motion. Any medical procedure carries some standard risks, and these include the risk of bleeding, infection, and blood clots. The American Academy of Orthopedic Surgeons states that less than 2% of the 600,000 people who have total knee replacements each year in the U.S. have serious problems. Knee replacement surgery has allowed many people to remain active and has given many a new lease on life. Your healthcare provider can help you make informed decisions to better your health care. Remember to call an elder. They've been waiting for your call. I'm Dr. Arnie Vainio, and this is Health Matters.
In 1994, the Oneida Nation of Wisconsin purchased a 2,400 apple tree orchard as part of their continuing strategy of reacquiring lands within the original boundaries of the reservation. There are now 4,000 trees in the orchard, offering 35 apple varieties to visitors, and is another example of the nation's commitment to growing healthy food.
The leaves will soon start turning, and the air will become a little more brisk, signaling the change of seasons from summer to fall. But for attendees of the Oneida Nation of Wisconsin's National Food Sovereignty Summit, the weather was ideal to visit the nation's apple orchard and learn how it fits in with the overall concept of food sovereignty.
The orchard was planted in 86, 87. The original orchard is basically across the street. It was planted on about 25 acres. Since then, the tribe bought it in 94, and then I came up here in 95. Right now, the orchard is 31 acres. We have 34 different varieties. We start picking somewhere around the middle of August. This year, unfortunately, we're a little late because of the cold spring and summer and wet, very wet. And right now, we are in the middle of pick your own season, and we pretty much opened the orchard for everything. What was planted first is on 111 rootstock, which is basically a standard tree, which means it takes a lot of maintenance, a lot of pruning in the wintertime. Since then, we've planted a lot of newer varieties, like I mentioned, Honeycrisp, Jana Golds, Galas, Fujis, and everything we planted now is basically on dwarfing rootstock, which takes some training right at the beginning, but at the end, the apple load pretty much takes care of everything else. We are on the northern zone, so we need to watch what varieties we plant. There are certain things that we just can't plant, like Granny Smiths. They have a very long growing season, and we're lucky if we get 3.5 months here. You know, lately we've been having late freezes in the spring and early freezes in the fall. This year is going to be a little different. I think we're going to stay kind of warm, but unfortunately very wet.
The orchard is part of what is known as the Oneida Community Integrated Food Systems, whose mission is to educate the Oneida community about food, agricultural opportunities, nutrition and health risks via events and workshops, and integrate Oneida and locally produced foods into the Oneida community and institutions. At one time, the orchard was part of the nation's enterprises, but the business model changed to one that is more tourist-oriented.
We're also very fortunate here in Oneida, in which we have built our integrated food system, so we can complement it with experiential learning. A lot of our work is really to continue to engage the community and build a healthy mindset for foods. The more we engage the community to really understand the value of healthy foods, the better the community can become at planting their own foods in their backyard and really sharing that experience with others.
Lately, because of the rain in the last 3 years, I've been ordering bigger rootstocks. I don't necessarily like to do that, but they're a little more hardy to the wet, to the mud. Obviously, we're open to the community here, but we also sell to our school system, gets our apples, our elder service gets our apples, we donate to our food pantry, along with other surrounding school systems. We have our Apple Fest here. A big part of it is down at Cultural Heritage, but up here we have the horse rides, and it's basically to get people to come out here, customers to come out here and see what we all have and all the different newer varieties we have, like the Honey Crisp and the Zestars. Honey Crisp is our best seller in apple. And with that, otherwise we are pretty much a market here. We have basically, like I said, 34 different varieties. Right now we're picking all the fall varieties, so we still have over 20 varieties that they can choose from. We have most of them in the shed for sale, retail, but you can also walk through, and we're really pushing to pick your own. So we have a lot of people coming with their families. They spend several hours here, if not half a day here. They just go from one side of the orchard to the other, and they try different apples, and then they pick what they like.
On this afternoon, Jeff was providing a tour of the orchard and its facility to a group from the National Food Sovereignty Summit. But once they board the bus to head back to the summit, he will once again turn his attention to the orchard.
I've been doing it most of my life, so I've done it for all these years because it's something different. Every year is something different. These last few years with all the rain, it's becoming a little unbelievable, but with all the different things you need to know, all the different insects, disease pressures, just weather, everything you do is dominated by the weather.
When you were a forager and a harvester and you're big, out there hunting game, you were considered poor because you could not buy food. So that concept really changed people's way of life and thinking about traditional food when people were so wealthy in that knowledge, where if you could no longer buy it, you were considered somewhat poor. But now that concept is flipping a coin over, where it's just like, okay, we're reclaiming our way of life again. But we don't have to say it's poor people's food. It's our food. We're proud of this food. We're proud to say that yes, this provides all these nutrients in it, and we have scientific data to even prove that. Even though we don't need scientific data, like why do we need scientific data? It's already been a proven fact from the beginning of time. But having to label it in this world, today's world, you have to have data, which is unfortunate. But for myself, it's like, why do we need data? Why do we need to have this pyramid when we already had, this is everything that's brought over, and I believe it's geared towards profiting on the food industry.
Aquaponics is a mix of aquaculture and hydroponics, and thanks to a grant by the U.S. Department of Agriculture, the Oneida Nation of Wisconsin has an alternative yet sustainable method of food production. Join us now as you learn how the Oneida Nation is utilizing aquaponics.
We're in a greenhouse. This is what the aquaponics system is housed in.
By definition, aquaponics is a system of aquaculture in which the waste produced by farmed fish or other aquatic animals supplies nutrients for plants grown hydroponically, which in turn purify the water. The Oneida Nation was looking at ways to extend the growing season, and they found what they were looking for in a federal grant.
We received all this, the funding for all this equipment, aquaponics equipment, the greenhouse equipment from a farm to school grant that was awarded to us in 2016. And 2017, that's when we really got the system up and running. We started introducing fish to the system, and we started small pilot projects of getting these plants growing, and started to learn more about how fast they would grow, and overall just learning more about aquaponics. A majority of the plants that we have here in the system right now are all lettuce varieties. So most of them are tropic. We have leaf, baby leaf. We did grow kale here for a while. Usually that's an annual lettuce that we grow. And then we also have other plants in our R&D, our research and development side of aquaponics, and we're actually growing strawberries currently, and we're also growing industrial hemp, CBD. Aquaponics is actually two different forms of methods of farming. So we have aquaculture, which is raising fish in a recirculating water system, and then hydroponics is the other part of aquaponics, which is raising vegetables and plants in a soilless environment. So when you combine the two, that's how you get aquaponics. So the fish's purpose in the system is simply to provide their byproduct, their waste, when they excrete urine and feces. That turns into a form of waste nitrogen. So when it reaches that nitrate, which is the most beneficial nutrient within the water, that's what benefits the plants. It's a symbiotic system that they live in.
The plants then take in the nutrients, the nitrates, and other bacteria, and actually cleans the water. And that benefits the fish, the tilapia. The water is recirculated via sump pump in a closed-loop water system. The project was one of the experiential field trips taken by participants in the Oneida Nation's National Food Sovereignty Summit.
Tilapia is a very hardy fish. They have a lot of wherewithal. They can withstand cold water, warm water temperatures, and they can fight off a lot of different diseases. In the winter, it's a lot easier to regulate and manage the atmosphere, the heat, or the temperature, the water chemistry, the water quality. That's why we choose tilapia. They can handle a range of different intangibles that take place within aquaponics.
My coworker was working on something of that sort, and I wanted to find out more of what was all that aquaponics, what he was all about. I didn't know that he had to do with fish. I didn't know it was a recycled water. When you go to New Mexico, we fight for water rights. We were fighting to make sure that we have enough water for our people, for farmers, for our cattle. One thing that is good about this, that you can plant stuff, a lot of greens during the winter days and during the summer. So it's on a condition that we might be able to use. That way we have plants, vegetables during the winter months instead of going out to the supermarkets and purchase a lot of this stuff. That way we can be self-sufficient and distribute a lot of this food to the daycare, to the elderlies, to people in general in the pueblo.
The project employs the disciplines of science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, collectively known as STEM. For example, the technology is the equipment and the various peripherals to run the system. What is grown here will be distributed within the community.
The science part of it, all of that is incorporated into aquaponics. So you have a lot of different methods that you get when it comes to STEM. So science would be the water chemistry, the water quality, measuring that. Engineering is the hydrology. So you have hydrology engineering, you have mechanical and standard engineering with the PVC piping and the compressors that are involved. We also have, the mathematics is when we have to calculate the feed, we have to weigh the fish. And by weighing the fish, we have to do, there's a lot of mathematics involved with how much feed they get per day, per month, per year. So that's how all of those, that's how STEM incorporates into aquaponics. The germination rates are actually cut in half in aquaponics when you compare them to your traditional soil-based environment or farming. So when we're talking about germination, so when you plant a seed in aquaponics, the media we use is rock wool. It's a little bit different than traditional soil. They'll germinate in 3 to 4 days after planting. Now, when you compare that to traditional soil-based farming or soil-based methods, that's about 7 to 10 days, 7 to 14 days, depending on what plant or what seed you're planting. So, therefore, it cuts the growth rates in half. Once they sprout and they germinate, we're going to transfer them over to these plant raft tables over here, where they'll live out the remainder of their I guess, plant life until they're ready to be harvested. We send about roughly 7 to 8 pounds to our high school. They have a lower or lesser amount of students there compared to the elementary, and the elementary actually takes in about 10 to 12 pounds, and that's weekly for both. Yeah, I would just like people to know that Oneida Aquaponics is dedicated to laminating the importance of local food production, sustainable agricultural practices, and overall making the local community more aware of these sustainable agricultural practices and the benefits that local food production can provide to a community.
For more information about Native Report or the stories we've covered, look for us on the web at nativereport.org, on Facebook, and on YouTube.
Thank you for spending this time with your friends and neighbors across Indian country. I'm Rita Aspinwall.
And I'm Ernie Stevens. Join us next time for Native Report.
Rita Aspinwall is an enrolled member of the Fond du Lac Band of Lake Superior, Chippewa, and is an ICWA social worker with Fond du Lac Social Services. Ernie Stevens is a member of the Oneida Nation of Wisconsin and is a film and television producer. Production of Native Report is made possible by grants from the Blandin Foundation, the Duluth Superior Area Community Foundation, and the Shakopee-Mdewakanton Sioux Community.